weather and all.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. So people are still arriving.
Yes.
Sorry for me, it's Natalie. I'm on my bicycle, so no camera.
Don't worry, Natalie. Enjoy and take care.
Yeah, no problem.
I was just thinking, I don't see any cameras anymore. Is it me or? But now you guys are back. Okay. Oof.
I will be switching off though to completely focus on Ezra's presentation.
Ah.
Yes.
Ezra, I think we wait. Let's say 1 or 2 minutes more. No, because
Yes, it's
just to
really
give people
you,
time.
the moment you give me a sign, I'll start.
Okay. Okay, so I will maybe already start with introducing you, Ezra, and then you can go ahead and then we'll see. I think there are at least 10 more people who will jump in probably in a minute. So hi, everyone. Happy to have you here. I guess you don't know all of the others here in the room because these are our 4 hubs combined, or at least the ones who could. Welcome. For those who don't know Ezra, he's part of our advisory board. And I guess, Ezra, you will immediately introduce yourself. But I want to thank you for giving us this session on media trends. And go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So very happy to join the group. I'm a change director at Mediahuis, which is a media organization based in Belgium, but we work across 5 countries by now. So we just added Germany to our portfolio, or part of Germany, I would say, a few titles there. We're active in Belgium with newspapers and radio stations and in the local television as well, in the Netherlands as well, and then in Ireland and in Luxembourg. My job there is to help our newsrooms to prepare for the future under the umbrella of the change direction. So, but I'll start sharing my my slides and then take you on a journey of some trends that I've spotted for the year ahead. Let me first see how that works here. Good, and then I'll make sure that I go in a full screen modus. Is that working for everyone? Do we see the screen, the full screen? Okay. So this is very much something that I started a few years back. There's an avalanche of trend reports, and most of them kind of repeats certain things, and they're not always made from a perspective from a media company, or not always clear, like, okay, what does it mean for me? And the trend report is always, of course, a kind of forecast of what might happen. So how much of it is something that we should monitor, or is it something that we should really explore further, or actually act on it? So I started collecting these trend reports and also tried to define some kind of more high-level messages out of them that could be relevant for media. And I'm always trying to look through a very simple lens. How do they impact what we do? How do they impact our organization and our offer and our services, as well as how do they impact the life of our audiences and their needs and behaviors? Because that's, for me, the kind of circle that I want to look at. And of course, there's a lot of things that influence that. It's a complex ecosystem of different influencing factors, from technological evolutions to moral and ethical constraints. And what follows is very much my personal selection and interpretation of these trends, but backed by data that's of course researched in these reports. A starting point is the pandemic life. I think I think you can all agree, and certainly in my case, that reality and life itself has changed. At least for me, the way I currently live and work is completely different from a few years ago. And the question now is, will it change back once the pandemic is over? And a recent study from Ipsos found that 18% of remote workers don't think it will ever go back. And from my personal perspective, that's on a very low end. I think we'll see that certain things will stay as they are. And you already see an anticipation in newsrooms that shift to a decentralized way of working, shifting to hybrid workflows. And there's new playbooks coming out of how to set it up. And some of these organizations have even decided that they will operate from now on in a completely hybrid office. So I think there's already signs out there that a new reality, a new way of working will certainly settle in. How that will be implemented, that's something that everybody's still trying to figure out. On the other side, and I really look at this from a news perspective, I think there's also a challenge that we're getting really, there's a bit of a fatigue around all the COVID-19 news, and it has led to a news fatigue, which also makes that it starts impacting our business model, and we start seeing people less engaged with news, and we will have to see how we can re-engage them in this year and the years ahead. And I think more worryingly even is that there's a whole generation that feels that they have kind of missed the fun of growing up and having the time of their life. And the question is, how will that influence them as consumers? How will that influence how they participate in society itself? It's still something that will have to play out. But it's certainly something that you start seeing popping up is that this has influence on a generation. It also has influence on our newsrooms. Mental health is an issue that that might not be top of mind, but that we start seeing the contacts during these periods have been thinning out. There's less groups that come together, and if you start or join a new organization, it's very hard to connect. People feel isolated, and the demand of extra work during in changing conditions is something that we might underestimate as organizations as well. The pandemic and also the whole period also has increased another behavior, and it's our media behavior. That was a period of media expansion, actually. Never before there was so much media consumed, and with that comes a battle of attention, a battle for our attention, a battle for money, and it's about to become more difficult. One of the business models that is being put front and central in that battle for attention are subscriptions, and that was already the case due to straining advertising revenue. But we see that news needs of consumers have kind of pushed publishers to work even more on their subscription offer. 79% of publishers now are convinced that subscriptions will be their main revenue in the year ahead. But of course, that comes against the reality that the consumer attention is already very stretched. So currently, this is an average day length in an American life. They need 32 hours as a consumer to do all their activities, and that means, of course, that we're multitasking more than ever, that we have therefore also maybe kind of diminished attention, and that will result in different media behavior as well at some point, if we or less engagement in certain forms of media if we all do it on top of other activities, of course. And then if your business model is that you want to charge for that attention, or that you want to charge for what you deliver, you might have to also start considering that wallets and eyeballs are somehow an finite resource. We still see in a lot of the predictions and forecasts that there's a willingness to spend for media. There's a willingness, and that's still growing, but we will hit at some point a limit. And I think it's wise for media or organizations to also start exploring different revenue models apart from paid content and subscriptions. So that's on the business side and attention side of things. One way that, and this is of course a far leap, but one thing that might start or be an alternative for a new generation of consumers might be cryptocurrency. And I'm saying this because you see in a lot of reports that the adoption of cryptocurrency is rising. Certainly with younger age groups, a crypto wallet is no longer something exotic. However, a broad adoption is far from there. Most consumers remain hesitant. They don't think it's safe. And if you have followed the last weeks, there was a very volatile market of cryptocurrency. But if I look at these numbers here, 44%, 46% of people say that they're already using some form of cryptocurrency or that they're interested in it. There's a slightly bigger percentage, 54, that's actually say that they won't engage in it the next year. So we might be close to a tipping point where this becomes a bit more mainstream. And then, of course, you could wonder, why wouldn't I be able to pay or get a subscription from media with cryptocurrency or with my crypto wallet? So there's a few media brands already exploring this. You can see here the example of Time. I think it's early in the market, but it's interesting to monitor to see will this be successful? How much of an audience? There is, of course, there might be disruption ahead because there's less transaction costs with cryptocurrency. So other payment solutions might be kind of disrupted by this. But it's something that's worth monitoring, I would say, in the year ahead and the year to follow. From there, going to the kind of much hyped Web3, or as I call it here, journalism 3.0. It's kind of the dream of a decentralized web, a decentralized media. And Web3 is, of course, a bit of marketing. And in essence, it points to a web that is no longer controlled and tied together by like central technology and central technology companies, but rather uses like blockchain technology or connect a new web of decentralized apps and data that's owned and controlled by every user. That's the kind of the pipe dream, and that's what people kind of have in mind. What does it mean in reality for now? I would say a lot of buzzwords, like a lot of abstract things still, like the NFTs, which are currently being hyped, but don't make it easier to understand what it might be about. An NFT for me, in essence, is just a unique blockchain-based digital asset that can be collected, monetized, and traded. So it's a unique digital asset. But for now, the kind of examples that we see are far from clear if they will maintain value. However, you could think that if it's a kind of digital property, that it could also be that you then become stakeholder in a media company. You see already media companies that try to monetize their existing assets like archives or pictures or small fragments, where you could get an ownership from in terms of an NFT. I'm not sure if that will be the long-term case. I think NFTs could also just be a kind of access pass. So you're not only getting ownership of content, but it becomes a kind of pass to certain services or to certain experiences with a media company. And in that sense, it's a digital ticket, rather than just a digital ownership of a specific fragment. So it should stand for more than just a piece of digital content. But still very early days, but I'm already seeing quite some American media companies, I must say, China as well, in Asia, who are exploring what it could mean in terms of value. But as I said, very early in the hype cycle, so it might be dead tomorrow, or at least those that have invested in NFTs might see that they're worth less than zero by tomorrow. So very much something that I would say currently to monitor, to explore, maybe to experiment with. It's quite easy these days to make NFTs and do something with it, see where it goes. Another form that's actually connected to that are these decentralized autonomous organizations, the so-called DOs. I don't know who invents these acronyms. I found them very confusing, I must say. But in the end, it just means these are organizations without CEOs, shareholders, without a central structure. They're owned by the network. And the rules of the organization are actually enforced on a blockchain. There's some media experiments happening here. Mirror and Pub.io, do check them out. They're quite interesting. They're the kind of newswires or publishing organizations that are owned by everyone in the network, and they're able to commission content to pay contributors to a kind of decentralized network. So if you're interested in them, do check them out. It's again quite niche, quite specific, but they do work at this moment. Not sure if they will scale beyond what they currently are. Of course, this is all a bit connected to the rise of a kind of what I call an influence journalist or influencer journalist. It's who do not longer need big media companies to kind of make a connection with their audience, and new tools and new channels make it possible for them to monetize their own brand. And Substack is a very good example of this. It hit 1 million paid subscriptions in last year, and it's still growing. And for bigger media companies, it will be a challenge to kind of have that new relationship with their big names, their powerful journalists who might start asking a part of the revenue back, because they say, like, I could monetize my own name on Substack, or I could get a bit of revenue back from you on your own brand. What kind of deal will I get here? So that's certainly something that that will happen, and it's already happening actually. And that's an additional challenge for media companies, or at least bigger media companies, and an opportunity for individual writers and creators. Games are the new MAL. I'm very interested in the games landscape. I think it's a kind of new paradigm. Whatever happens in the game world or inside games might happen afterwards in a bigger version of, or a different version in the internet, or a new version of the internet. So it's a space I'd like to monitor close. It's also growing very fast, and I would say it's the rise of gamers is projected now to pass 3 billion in 2022. So in this year, that's a huge number of people, and I think therefore that more traditional media companies should take a closer look at who these gamers are. There's not just one type of gamers. There's many different gamers with different needs, and some of them might really be adjacent to what you currently are doing, and you might be missing out opportunities to engage them. You also see that new gamers are not necessarily teens and 20-year-old. There's a growing group of 55 to 64-year-old gamers, and probably they're not doing massive killing and shooting games, but they might be doing interesting new puzzle games or different things. So there's an opportunity there to be explored. And what I said before is as well, it's much more than just gaming. It becomes I said it's the new mall. It's where people hang out. It's where people interact with each other. It's where people create things together. It's where people go because they're bored and they want to relieve stress. So and you see that the most successful games, like the ones that are here, Fortnite, Animal Crossing, Minecraft, Roblox, are where people can actually do things together, hang out together, have an experience together, and even become a kind of storytelling environment. Like the Dream SMP is a kind of environment in Minecraft that's being created by a group of YouTubers that have created a kind of cinematic experience where they play characters in the game itself. So again, an evolution of what gaming is, becomes more a cinematic experience. Very interesting kind of sector to look at, to see how people engage, how things are monetized as well. A lot to learn from what's happening there. And then, of course, the next step or the next iteration of gaming might happen in the metaverse, or whatever we think the metaverse is. It's a buzzword, clearly very hard to figure out what it will become, but it's maybe also very hard to ignore, not in the least because somebody like Mark Zuckerberg has changed the name of his company to Meta, so claiming a stake of what the metaverse might be. I feel currently it still feels like an upgrade of Second Life. I'm wondering if my old Second Life account is still active, because I heard Second Life is coming back, but it feels like that we're not yet very evolved since then. But the idea of a kind of parallel world where that's kind of continuous and that you can dip in and that has many connected data points is, of course, in itself interesting. However, on the media side, publishers and news media currently indicate that it's too far and too unclear for them to yet engage in. So only 8% of news publishers is indicating that this year they will do something in the metaverse, which I think makes sense because it's not yet there. So most of them will just, I guess, write about it and just monitor it from the sidelines. However, if you look at the range of digital activities that could become metaverse activities, it's clear that this is certainly an area to monitor closely and to understand who will be the new players in this environment, what will be the stack, the metaverse tech stack that you have to build on top of, and how well you are prepared for that at some point to engage in. And I would say that in the first place, augmented reality experiences and everything that's really layered on top of reality is being forecasted as the biggest growth area. I think also there the kind of friction that you still have with VR, as having these devices that you need to put on yourself. That's less the case of VR, and there's the biggest growth area. The question is, when will we go from single app uses that are just happening in their own isolated app experience to a more connected universe of connected apps and connected data that we could call the metaverse. But certainly interesting to see how it evolves. And of course, the bigger media companies like the New York Times, they're already pushing ahead. They have established recently a new spatial journalism division or dedicated track in their R&D department, and their focus will completely be on extended virtual augmented reality storytelling effects, exploring wearables, exploring spatial audio, exploring how game engines might be used to render stories. This is a story where they recreated a kind of environment. So it's a real environment, but they recreated it actually with a game engine, and you can kind of walk around it and hear parts of the story in that room. So it's good that some of these bigger companies are doing the exploration for us, because not everybody has the same kind of deep pockets as this kind of organization. And a lot of geeky stuff will appear as well. Bodysuits to experience and to feel the metaverse. There's even these kind of brain interfaces that you put in your ear, and if you think something, things start moving. All very much sci-fi stuff that's somewhere happening at the edge of the exploration currently. Happy to keep track of this, but of course far away from mainstream adoption at this point. Closer to reality, video landscape. I think many of you are monitoring that as well. I would say the year, the past year was the year of TikTok, and the year ahead might still be. There's a huge and rapid rise of TikTok, projected to have 1.5 billion active users in 2022, and inevitably that will take attention time and revenue away from other apps and other media activities. So that's something that you have to keep in mind, and therefore you see a lot of clones of TikTok that are reshaping the video landscape. Everything become TikTokified, I would say, and publishers also indicate that they're shifting towards these social media formats that are more TikTok minded or TikTok related to these kind of story formats that are in a different way served than traditional social media. However, for news media and media in general, it's unclear what your strategy could be. I guess building relationship with audiences, having your brands, kind of brand exposure to new audiences that aren't there. But in terms of journeys or monetization, it's still a very difficult environment, a very unreliable environment as well. So unclear what the end game could be there for media companies, as has been the case for many social media companies actually. This one is just a kind of reminder of what we I think already know, is that asphalt social are becoming the main video habits, and that live TV is somewhat still important, but it's kind of receding in importance and being kind of overtaken by other video behaviors. And certainly if you look at this forecast in the younger age groups, like live television is very much on the last place, behind games, behind online TV. It's really the last place that it takes. Then switching to audio, I would say it's also very much shifting into new kind of audio behaviors. Very interesting landscape. One of the fastest growing media behaviors, and if you think back of the kind of multitasking kind of wheel that I showed you earlier, it makes sense because audio is a behavior that you can actually layer on top of other activities, and therefore there's still a big opportunity to grow in these moments that you cannot do another media behavior, but that you can layer audio on top. And I guess currently podcast is king in this new audio landscape, and we still see that there is projection of significant growth in time spent for audio, and you see also publishers that are saying that they will be putting more resources than ever into podcasts and digital audio. However, I think there's also a little bit of a blinking warning sign there. Because of the increased number of podcasts, the low barrier to get into that field and to launch your own podcast, the kind of monetization paradigm that's now being launched, so a lot of new ways to subscribe to podcasts, it will become increasingly hard to actually get people to your podcast, because the offer is so extensive, and we already see that the average number of listeners to a podcast is decreasing. It's just harder to make big hits like it was before. So yeah, media who want to invest in podcasts will have to invest in creating loyalty, in creating engagement, in really doing more than just doing good production value. They will have to create communities around it, have good marketing, and build their fan base around podcasts. As I said, there is a big battle happening there, battle for the customer experience. Many companies still trying to become the single point for audio and for subscription in that audio. The strongest media brands will, of course, try to have their own audio destinations. Others will have to rely on the bigger platforms like Spotify, Apple, and even Facebook now currently launching their audio space. It offers so there's a lot still moving there. It offers a lot of new opportunities. We've seen the rise and a bit of fall of live audio, but certainly Twitter Spaces is I think becoming less of a hype. It has a steadily an engaged audience that seems to engage in these kind of conversational formats. So we'll still see an evolution, and it will be yeah, a challenging environment to actually grow an audience in, but an interesting one for certain moments and certain needs that your audience might have, like a bit more interaction, a bit more engagement within audio. Other formats that we see arising are text-to-speech audio versions, short audio snippets, which will become easier to make as AI makes it easier to produce these kind of formats. From that, and I'm almost, I'm slowly rounding up. I'm getting to data, and one that was already there, I think a year or two ago, where Google already had announced that they would kill the cookie, and then they said, well, let's wait another few years with killing the cookie. And so everybody now is still wondering where will it end. And then Google last week said, you know what, that whole idea of cohorts, that won't work anymore. We're going to do something else. We're now going to be working on topics. So there's a big question mark of, okay, what will be the next, or how will we manage whatever the cookie did for us, because it kept a tremendous amount of value for advertisers. And you see, of course, that publishers now start to look at, okay, how do we build that data capability ourselves? They are forming specific data services, like Pivotal from the New York Times, or SN Data, where our Mediahuis is actually engaged in. Nucleus in the UK. There's a few of these really bigger cross-brand first data platforms that have being started and that are there to offer new new ways to advertise, contextual advertising, unified IDs, working with cohorts. So there's a whole landscape, far from clear where it will land, but an interesting one to see where the cookieless future will bring us. And on the back of that, the consumer actually expects, there's a conflicting experience there. I would say a conflicting expectation. On the one hand, in many surveys, it's clear that personalization is something that consumers expect, but then they also getting more and more tired of hurdles in the experience where they have to give 15 times consent or fill a lot of forms to give consent for their data. So on one hand, they expect privacy, and on the other hand, they expect personalization, and they all want this to happen without them being bothered. So I think the companies that can solve this conundrum, or that can solve actually the tension between getting a better, more personalized experience and one that's also trusted and secure, will be the ones that thrive in the future. From data to AI is a small step. The one thing that I kind of keep or kind of see there is that this computing power, which was before very much in the hands of the big players, is becoming increasingly democratized. It's fairly easy for every company now to get the power of AI tools in their hands, and there's also an increasing awareness and willingness to start using those. 85% of publishers in this year's Reuters Institute survey said that AI will be very important in delivering better personalization, content recommendations, automating and speeding up the newsroom workflows. So AI has very much arrived as a kind of operational solution, and it's not so much a kind of future pipe dream anymore. And even smaller newsrooms, so you see dedicated workshops and dedicated guides for smaller newsrooms to engage with AI, and all of them are looking for good tools, good solutions that they can manage with a small number of people. So you will see a growing number of tools that really drastically improve the workflows of these organizations, from ideation to the creation of stories to how they're published, and everything that can create or can assist that process will be welcomed in newsrooms and by media companies. The downside of all that increased power in the hands of everyone is, of course, it's easier than ever for everyone to make media that's fake or and images that are indistinguishable from the real one. I believe very much that the future will no longer be about fact-checking what is fake, but very much about proving what is real. And the reason that I say it is because it's so much easier to make fake images than it is to check them. And I see an increasing number of fact-checking organizations, and by the time they have verified one, there's already 1 million more that are made. So I think we should reverse that thinking and start thinking about how can we prove things are real, how can we prove that things can be trusted. And it's something that we have to look into, because media are seen as part of the problem. We're not necessarily creating misinformation, but we're seen as being the ones that are, we're kind of, it kind of puts a bad rep on top of what we do. So we have to find new ways to establish trust and establish that what we bring as media is trustworthy. And luckily, technology could help fight that. Not so much, as I said, verifying what's fake. That might be still important and could be automated, but also making more and more clear what can be trusted, what can be accepted as verified information. And I think newsrooms will increasingly invest in making sure that the origin of what they make is clear and trustworthy. To end, two softer things, but I think it's important, certainly from a journalism perspective, to look at them. I think we have to realize as journalists that we're operating in a very polarized world, and that it's very hard to hold on a position of just covering both sides when one side of the story is manifestly denying certain facts. So I think just operating and always showing both sides of the story when one side of the story is a clear negation of facts is something that's dangerous and that's polarizing as well. A second thing that we need to grow in is becoming better at covering very complex issues. People are tired of hearing alarmist headlines, but that doesn't mean that the climate crisis is going away. So we need to find better ways to tell complex, multifaceted stories and things like the Oxford Climate Journalism Network are great initiatives to learn together how we can do that better. And it might also need infusion of some system thinking in a newsroom, so that we're not just making simple headlines or disconnected stories, but that we start seeing how some of these things are interconnected, how they're influencing, and giving our audiences also the tools to connect stories with each other. I think there's a really interesting area for newsrooms to invest in. Finally, diversity and inclusion, something that's very much I think very important to take away as well, because we're far away from true diversity. This is actually a very painful image that comes from last Reuters Report Institute report. And as you can see, at the top of newsrooms, there is not yet a true diversity. And I think we have to really find a way for gender, age, ethnic, or other diversity to be more balanced in our media organizations. Certainly, if we want to represent the reality of the audiences that we serve. And there's also technology and tools that could help us not only in who's working for the organization, but also the stories that we cover, to have them more balanced and a bit more diverse than we might think they currently are. Last adjacent thing is a little bit that we're seeing also in, or that's what reports say, there's a shift to authenticity, or people, young people also start following influencers that are more authentic than maybe the first generation of influencers, and they're themselves also becoming fed up with this kind of image of perfection. So they're growing tired of the picture perfect post, and they want to be more themselves and more vulnerable on social media. And I think that look for authenticity is something that we can work with, and that's something that's certainly for media companies an interesting insight. Voila, I think that was the big rundown. So before I conclude, I would say, how do what do you do with these trends? And the deck is, I think, online or can be spread afterwards. It's a lot of information. It might not always be clear what you can do with. So I use this image of what I call the cone of uncertainty. There's not one clear line from these trends to one future. There might be different futures, and one might be very probable. There might be one that you prefer as a company, but there might be also variations that are unexpected but still possible. And it's good to have a few different scenarios and see if that scenario would happen, how would I act in that scenario. There's a few questions that you could help you as well. If you look at these slides, like understanding what drives the change, wondering how that might shape the expectations and needs of your audiences, but also the way you work and the way you deliver value. You might want to wonder if you're currently doing something and it can be replaced by any of these trends now. You might start wondering, okay, how do I encompass that? How do I run ahead of that trend? Or maybe it offers new opportunities for partnerships, collaborations. I think that's the whole idea of the Future Media Hub. Like, how can we strengthen each other? How does it inspire? I think that's a little bit the takeaways of this presentation. Voilà.
Thank you, Ezra. I think if there are any questions, please just raise your hand and show yourself. That would be nice. And don't be scared.
It was a rush, but I I had to take a little bit that pace to get through the slides. Mathieu, I see Mathieu raises his hand. I see.
Hello,
Good to hear. Mathieu, it's good to see you back. Very
good
nice.
to see you too, and just a great thank you for all your inputs at Radio France. We are more than interested about what's going to happen, and we have to convince day after day our top management that those trends are super important. I know some people from my team are in the room too. And just a quick word to say thank you. What you said about audio and Metaverse, I'm still expecting something real important regarding to what we can do as audio producer to be relevant in this new world.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure that we have to do something, but
yeah,
we are expecting something. And just a warm and a great thank you for your work. Always impressive.
super interesting.
That's special.
Mathieu, I can imagine like things like spatial audio are very much something that you're looking into in that sense.
Yes, object-oriented audio are key of one strong flow of development at Radio France. And what you've said, also I've noticed the great work of the New York Times that you are pointed out. Super interesting for us.
Yeah.
Plenty
cool.
of
Thank you very much.
writing. Thank you again. And thank you, Sarah, for organizing this.
I see some other raised hands. I think Santeri, I think, if I'm not sure if that's your first name or.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Bit of an exotic name, I guess, but you know, here we go.
Like
anyway, thank you for the very enlightening and I'd say very broad presentation of all the topics you covered. It was very, very impressive. I wanted to maybe have a chat or a short conversation or question about the influencer economy and decentralization, because I definitely see the same trend that in a decentralized internet, the role of the influencer becomes even greater than it's today, because distribution, etc., of all digital content decentralizes a lot, and then we maybe have to rely on these sort of influencer networks in order to find the kind of content that we need. And how do you think then that media, let's say larger media, legacy media companies are able to embrace this change and sort of utilize these decentralized networks in the way they operate? I understand it's quite a general question, but maybe we can brainstorm a little.
Yeah, but interesting, and I think a lot of the influencers or interesting people that will use the decentralized web and these new ways of publishing are actually already inside big media companies. That's what you currently see is individual authors that have a big name and that already have a successful blog or newsletter are starting to wonder, should I become like an own franchise or have a different kind of relationship with my audience? And I think big media companies, if they're smart, they spot that trend early on and start the conversation with that talent. Like, okay, let's explore this together. Let's see how this could work. And maybe that means then different contracts and different conditions, but at least that's better than your talent running away and you're missing out on the opportunity.
Can I ask a second question to continue this conversation? How do you think this could media houses then embrace this change also in ways that they are funded and monetizing their efforts to provide good media for the people, these decentralized economies, etc.? Or is it more of a thing that's going to zoom past the big players and just the small bubbling under new generation media outlets will take the crown?
I think at Mediahuis I think as all media companies we're trying to understand how can we reach younger generations, and I think that layer around your company of people that connect with you as authors, as contributors, but do it in a different way with different kind of contracts, maybe a more decentralized network could be a good bridge towards a media brand. So I think that's something that we really want to look into, like how can we have an honest and good relationship with the new generation of creators that might want to be independent but still want to contribute to a media brand like the media brands that we have.
Yeah. Like one aspect of it could be maybe organizing or founding decentralized autonomous organizations with a larger ring of media contributors. And to me, the question seems to be, whether media companies are open to that sort of decentralization or not, because obviously decentralization works with a bit of a different rule set than, for example, publicly owned media companies in different countries.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, absolutely. It's food for another or a separate debate, I would say. I'm certainly also interested in this kind of structure of newswires that's being decentralized set up, and I'm wondering what big organizations like Reuters and AP will do with that. If they will commission things within such a network or not, or if they would like to keep a central control on that.
Yeah. Anyway, I've taken enough screen time now. Thank you very much for the conversation and the presentation.
Good.
Any other questions? I see a lot of nice words for you, Ezra, in the chat, but maybe someone wants to share this live or ask another question.
I have a short question for you, Ezra. I really found it interesting that you were saying that especially young audiences are looking at more trustworthy influencers, which is an interesting take on the whole influencer business, because it starts to sound like journalism. People who tell stories, gather stories and tell them in a trustworthy way. That's journalism in effect. And it's something quite different from influencers. So does that mean, in your opinion, that our journalists need to grow more towards being influencers, or that influencers need to grow more towards being journalists? Or is there something new in between those two that we need to explore?
I think that the challenge for journalists within an existing media brand is, of course, that they're attached to the existing media brand. And then the question is, what is in the perception of your audience the most important brand? Is that the brand of the journalist and what he stands for and the authenticity that he or she has, or is that the media company that might be having a different image? I'm not sure if there's a general rule for that. I think strong personalities in media brands are currently already becoming influencers for young people, regardless of their media brands that they work for. And the other way around, I see influencers that are being picked up by traditional media and being asked to be their voice or be their face. So not sure if there's a general rule there, but as media companies, I think it's interesting to monitor. I'm not so sure if a lot of media companies do social listening and checking who of their staff are actually influencing. This is something you can really track. You can track higher the talkability of your journalists, who's influencing on social media, who are people following, who are they discussing things with. And then you could give those people a different role, or you could see how can I leverage that. I'm not sure if media management is doing that currently.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Hi, Therese.
Hi, Ezra. I have a question now that we have you here. Where there's a difference between the commercials, media channels and players and the public broadcasters. What would you advise us to do how do you see the role of a public broadcaster evolving in the future when it comes to digital? Because there's always a big difference when you're into customer engagement, conversion are the tools that you need because you need the money to drive your operations, because that's what you depend on. But as a broadcaster, public broadcaster, how do you see our role in this? I wonder, because we're stuck in the middle, and you're looking at it from a different sides. So it might be interesting to see how you look at the different role. It's a different hat, I know, but
I come from the public broadcasting side as well, and so I've
I know
been on both sides, and I'm very much convinced that a strong public broadcaster helps the whole sector. However, I see an opportunity for public broadcasters to go much broader, since they don't have to keep like willingness to pay for money for news or something else. Is not a mandatory thing, and certainly as we move into a subscription reality, some people might miss out on news because of that, and it's also a concern for commercial media. We should have offers that allow as much as possible people to consume our news, but even then there might be people that will never engage in a subscription, and that might miss out on media experiences that way. I think a public broadcaster has an opportunity to engage much broader, and I think that idea of a shared reality that we all understand in a similar way the world and the facts in the world is so important in these days. That's the role of public broadcasters, that's establishing that sense of shared reality through whatever means possible. That doesn't need to be news in itself. It could be through fiction. It could be through a shared entertainment experience as well.
Thank you.
Last question for Ezra. And if not, Ezra, then thank you from all of us for your very insightful presentation.
Was a nice group as well to talk to. Would have loved to have this in a physical meeting, because then you see much more people. Now I saw many names. Some of them I know from working with them before. So I would have loved to greet everyone personally, but that will come next time.
Hopefully, yeah. Thanks a lot. And for all the others, we will share the presentation and recordings later on Slack in different channels.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you, Ezra.
Bye.